Hello and welcome. I'm Bruce. This is Speed and Color. On today's episode, Harrison and I take a look at my latest build and go over it in a fair amount of detail. There's some cool things on this bike that I thought I'd share with you. We also wanted to find a new format for looking at builds and for talking to builders. So I hope you'll give us some feedback on this. We think the format is good, but I'd like to know from you, what do you think of it? What would you like to see different? What works in what we did? So join us, sit down for a bit, take a look at the bike with us, and enjoy. Welcome to Speed and Color. We're back again. Today's episode, we're going to talk about my latest build. Something that we wanted to do. I think at this point you've probably already seen Mac's bike. We did that one first. And I will just address the absence of Mac right now. This digital media thing, social media, all of it, I'm going to tell you, it is time consuming. It's a huge commitment. Taking time to film and to edit and to do all of this stuff, it really is a big time commitment. Mac really wanted to do this. You know, we got some of it in. He has started a new career path. That's taking a lot of his time. And unfortunately, it's just really tough for him to fit stuff in right now. So Mac and I are cool. There's no issues or anything. You're probably going to see Mac back. That's fun to say. You're probably going to see Mac back, but on a limited appearance for now. So I went to work and thought, well, I got to have a new character on screen with me. And I found this guy. So Harrison is going to be with us. He's going to be working behind the cameras and mics, but in front of them as well. We're going to do a bunch of stuff together.
Oh, yeah.
Harrison, welcome.
Thank you,
Good
Chris.
to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So Harrison rides. He's a character. We're going to get into all of that. I think we're probably going to have to do another episode where we talk to Harrison and learn some stuff. We got some ideas, but we're not gonna tell you about that right now.
Can't get into those, yeah.
No. So here we go. Let's talk about Bruce's Sportster. I will just say that if you watch I forget if it's in the introduction or if it's the Get to Know Bruce episode, you would know a little bit about this bike already, that Karen bought this bike for me.
Yeah.
It was a surprise. I had seen it. I fell in love with the bike. She bought it for me, which was absolutely crazy. It's been down to Port Dover to Friday the 13th with us. It's been around a little bit, and when just before the pandemic, not knowing the pandemic was going to happen, just before the pandemic, I decided to refine it, to do it my way, to put my fingerprint on it. So I did a bunch of stuff that kept a lot of the original bike, most of the original bike, but just kind of tweaked it and made it mine.
Yeah, I've seen that. It wasn't that around like 2019 you were doing that?
I started in 2019 and I finished it, oh boy, February of this year of 2023.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, and of course that tells everybody that we're filming this in 2023. So I shouldn't have said that, but it's okay. It's a spoiler alert. We're in 2023.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a while getting done, but again, similar to our friend Kurt who builds.
Yeah.
I try and do everything myself, and in this case, I built the motor, I did the paint, I did all the body work, I did the frame, fabrication. I did as much as I could possibly do on my own, and there's a couple little exceptions. and I'll talk about those and tell you about those when we get to them. But that's the background. So I'm going to kick it over to Harrison to get me rolling.
Start us off? Yeah, well, we got to start from the front of the bike for sure. So let's talk about like your fork setup, what wheels you're running. I think that's kind of obvious.
Yeah, good place to start is at the front.
Yeah, well,
So
front to work our way back.
Pretty simple. One of the things I loved about the bike was the spokes. The spoke rims are the ones that were on the bike when Karen got it for me. The tires, the old Shinkos were the white walls were kind of yellowed and the rubber was getting fairly hard. So kind of the last thing I did once I had it all together in the spring, I decided to change it and put some fresh rubber on it. Just, to make sure I didn't fall down or something in a corner. Yeah.
So Shinkos front and rear then?
Yes.
Nice. Yep. Excellent. I run Shinkos on my bikes too.
Nice tire, and of course with this, jumping to the back for a second, you'll notice the fender is fairly tight to the tire. These are the tires that I use to set up the fender clearances and everything. So changing tire manufacturers, a little different size, probably not a great idea once I've done that. Because the fenders are tight.
Yeah. Excellent. So when you were building this, this is obviously not stock height. So let's talk about the suspension in the front. Are they cartridge and dampeners in the front?
Yeah, so it's a stock front end.
Okay.
And I went through a lot of soul searching on this one with the front end. There's a Springer right behind Harrison there. I thought about Springer, and I knew that Paco Springers were really, really good. And I thought, should I put a Springer on it? And I called Paco, and I'm going to be honest, and I'm not knocking Paco, the great company, good products and everything. I got a hold of a customer service guy, and he said, okay, you need to measure this, measure that. I sent him pictures of the bike, did all the measurements and everything. And I was really thinking I was going to pull the trigger on a Springer front end.
Okay.
And he ghosted me. I called into customer service. He wasn't in. I got no return call back. Nobody wanted to help me, it seemed. I don't know if they didn't want to ship to Canada. I don't know what happened, but it got really awkward over the Springer. And I thought, you know what, Bruce? One of the things you really liked about the bike was the front end. So why are you trying to change that? And I scrapped the Springer idea and thought, there'll be another bike for a Springer. So I kept the same front end the bike had when I got it.
Yeah.
What I didn't really like, the lowers had been shaved, but they hadn't been nicely finished. They were painted matte black to hide all the sins.
Yeah.
So that had to be fixed. So I did grind them and obviously polished them and got those cleaned up. The other thing is the bike sat a little bit nose up. If you've got a long front end, the Frisco style, that front end up in the air, I love it. I got no issue with it.
Yeah.
But if your bike sits just a little high, so it's not really Frisco style, it's not really up there, but it's not really down there, it's kind of in no man's land, that's where I felt this one was. So I wanted to get the frame rails, the lower frame rails, parallel to the ground.
Ooh, yeah.
And talked to the boys at PFX, and Brent said, progressive suspension lowering kit, that's the way to go.
Nice.
So I threw one in, dropped it, I think I went down 2 inches. So it limits the travel a little bit, but it did exactly what I wanted. It got the frame rails lower at the front and parallel to the ground. So now the bike has the stance that I really wanted.
For the people that are listening, this bike's got super smooth lines. It's an amazing build that looks super slick. If we're going from that forks then, let's talk about, because this doesn't look like the factory neck, but it is.
It is.
So you've customized this neck in some sort of way. Let's explain that a little bit.
Sure.
Because it's definitely not like my Sportster.
So Sportsters have, from the factory, on the lower triple tree, there are a couple large bumps, if you will, that hit on a welded tab on the neck.
Yeah.
It's a very, how can I say it? It's a crude system. It very effective, but it's crude. It doesn't look nice, and there's this square stock tab stuck on the front.
It's kind of an eyesore.
Yeah, it just doesn't look that great. And then, of course, you add on the security system, which is that crazy tab with the hole drilled in it for putting a padlock through. And you get all that going, and it's like, really? This is the best
going on up front.
This is the best we could do, Harley-Davidson. We got so much other nice stuff going on Harley-Davidsons, and you got that hanging off the front end. So I really wanted to clean it up. Did some research, came up with an internal fork stop that is designed for the hourglass neck, which this is not.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But I looked at the pieces, did some measuring and everything, and I figured out that if I had the lower triple tree machined, get rid of the bumps, I had to have part of it flattened out, and then I needed some holes drilled and tapped right in the right places. That's one of those things that I laid it out. It's my idea and everything. I simply don't have the machining tools to lock it down and get it in the right position. So I took it down to, I believe the name of the shop was Aaron's Machine Shop. Took it down there. The guys were great. It cost me $100, $150, whatever it was.
That's nothing.
But they locked it down and got it centered and drilled the holes in the right place, and it worked out really, really nice. There was a little bit of work to get the what would you call it, the bearing height, the distance in there right, to make sure that the seats were in the right place. The bearing cups were in the right place. But I got all that worked out, and if you could see it, the clearances at the surfaces are really nice. There's not big gaps, but nothing's rubbing. It worked out really, really well.
Yeah, everything is
so
very
really
smooth.
Cleaned it up. Got rid of all those crazy tabs and bumps. I was able to polish up that lower, and I think it looks great, and the stop is good. It limits the front wheel travel a little bit, but I'm usually trying to lean to turn more than I'm trying to turn the handlebars anyway. It worked out well.
Did it change the feel of the front end at all?
No.
So it's still
like
exactly.
Yeah.
Still feels nice. Excellent.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and then I noticed also not the factory headlight.
Not the factory headlight.
There isn't much factory left on this thing, is there?
No.
You've been through it all.
In a word.
Yeah,
no.
totally.
The factory mount is a big cast aluminum ugly thing. To me, it was ugly. I apologize. I apologize to anybody with a Sportster. It was ugly to me. This particular one was ugly because somebody had taken a couple cuts at it and then painted it matte black, and the Dewey, the cap in the center that covers the mounting bolt, was kind of, I don't know if somebody left a rag with solvents on it on top of it, but it's a plastic piece, and it all looked more like a vinyl roof in there than
all corroded and everything. Nasty.
So I thought, okay, that's got to go away.
Yeah.
I got the new mount, and then I looked at the headlight and thought, oh, that headlight doesn't work with that mount. So then we went to work again. My buddies at PFX, we went through a couple lights to figure it out, because what we needed, and I'd have to go back and look at how this works, but we needed a bottom mount light that we could mount from the top. It's reverse of what it's supposed to be. But then we needed one by turning it upside down effectively to mount it the way we did, hanging down. We had to be able to take the ring and the headlight out and turn those
Also
180
flip it.
degrees so that the light projected from the glass is correct.
So
it was a little bit of a job to get just the right light, but it is a chrome headlight with the chrome mount, and of course that big pike nut sticking up top there. So it all worked out pretty well, and it works great. Not a lot of vibration issues or anything like that. It's just fine. So I do like it.
That's awesome.
And as you can tell, I do like chrome, and that just kind of fit right in there.
Yeah, you definitely seem like a chrome or go home boy.
I'm a reflection guy.
Yeah, it's the jewelry to all bikes, right?
Yes,
no blackout anything.
Bling.
Yeah, all chrome. Well, and then going from the front, then we talked about the forks. We talked about your neck. I think the neck is one of the most special parts about that bike. Obviously, you did that when this bike was just bare frame.
Yes.
Yeah. So going from there, let's talk about bar setup and apes. Why did you go with apes? Like was that your style?
They were on the bike.
They were on the bike already.
Part of what I loved about it.
Yeah?
Not changed. Those are.
All right.
And even are these Roland Sands?
Yeah, Roland Sands grips you have?
The Roland Sands grips were on there. The only thing that wasn't there is the switches were black. So I bought the Harley chrome kit to chrome all the switches. I looked at, going with Moto Gadget switches or something a little more sleek. And it just, I had this, and they look good and they function really well. And again, with the addition of the pike nuts for anybody who's listening and not watching, if you haven't seen them, got them from Lowbrow. They're basically, rather than an acorn nut, rather than being short, they have a tall spike on them.
Yeah, I was going to say that they're just spiky nuts.
Yeah, and the reason I went with them, and Harrison might not realize this yet, the reason I went with them is if you turn them sideways and look at the side profile, they look similar to a spade.
Oh, okay.
So
I can see it now.
It kept with the spade geometry.
Yeah. Okay, all the angles are right.
So everything had to get pike nuts wherever I could. So in this case, I used the pike nuts up on the handlebars. I think they look great. The thing about using nuts is I had Alfred in here for hours cutting pieces of threaded rod and grinding the ends to smooth them out and everything, because the only way to make a bolt out of a nut is to put a piece of threaded rod in it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So that's what's been done.
That's quite tedious because that's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and then obviously you got the one mirror. Well, you're a one mirror kind of guy. So it's a slick.
Yeah, it's a retro thing.
Yeah.
I wanted a mirror on it, but I didn't want two mirrors. I'm not, one thing about me, I'm not big on symmetry.
Okay.
I don't care about symmetry. When I paint, and I'm not saying that I just hack it together, but things don't have to be symmetrical.
Okay.
It's okay when they are, but they don't necessarily have to be.
All right. I love that. Well, moving down from the bars now, obviously all braided cable lines coming down. That's a beautiful touch.
Braided stuff is a common theme on the bike, and I'll touch on that right now. So the control cables are braided. I forget what they call that. It's kind of a stainless look.
I was trying to think of it too, and
they're a lighter color. They look great on the chrome bars, and with the chrome holders and everything. That all ties together nicely.
Yeah.
All the electrical on this bike is run in braided brass.
Yes, I had seen that.
So if you see brass braid, there's wires in there.
In there, yeah. And I love that.
And all the fluid lines, all the oil lines are black braided hose.
Those that's very common in the drag racing world.
That's where I get it from.
I don't know if you know much about that one, would you? Yeah. I think it's followed over to your bikes. That's great.
And we'll talk more about those, but I just wanted to, in an ideal world, would it have been nice to go with everything brass braid? maybe. But the problem is you can't get brass braided, or I couldn't find. I always get caught when I say things like you can't get.
In the comments for that one.
So I couldn't find brass braided AN hose. I could have gone aluminum or stainless or polished or whatever you want to call it. I didn't really like the stainless braided AN hose because frankly it's been done to death. It's kind of like black. It's been done to death.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't where I wanted to go. So I was able to reconcile that 3 different braids would work.
Yeah, I love it. I love it a lot. So going from the front, we're going to hit the meat and potatoes now of this bike. This is going to be the best part for me, at least my favorite.
Okay.
So right now we got your Mr. Mojo tank on there, but I know this bike has 2 different versions. And that's what's exciting about this bike. So let's talk about a little bit of that on how you came up with the color of the frame, and then also 2 different paint jobs that kind of offered 2 different styles that you wanted to hit with one bike. Right. You kind of hit both of the best worlds with that, didn't you?
I did, and I love painting. This story, man, I could go on for hours.
I believe you.
And eventually I will, because I own the podcast, so I'll say whatever I want.
Keep going.
So, because I love painting so much, I've gotten back into it. I'm really enjoying it. I wanted to be able to do 2 different paint jobs for the same bike. And it had to tie together, obviously. It had to come together with something common. The other thing is, when I got this bike and took it, there used to be a shop in Calgary called Lucid Moto, I think he called himself.
Yeah.
It was a cool shop. They ran into financial issues anyway. Things happened there. It wasn't great. But there was a guy who worked there at one time, Dan, and Dan is he's a British guy. I love Dan. I get a real kick out of him. He's got like I think he's got a gold tooth and another one's got a tattoo on it. Anyway,
nice. I love
he's
that.
a neat dude.
Yeah.
But Dan said to me when I had the bike in there for some service work, I went to pick it up and he said, "That bike needs a sissy bar." And I went, "Shit, did you have to say that?"
Yeah.
It's like the gloves are off.
It's back into building again.
So that was the other thing that drove the 2 paint jobs, is I wanted to do a sissy bar on this, because Dan was absolutely right. This bike needed a sissy bar.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out how I was going to do it, and if I'll try and explain for people listening and not watching this. The fender that came on the bike, which I love, it's a very cool, short, fat little fender, really accentuates the back tire. But this thing is so short that it doesn't actually come quite to the midpoint of the back tire. And if you look at where the mounts are for a sissy bar on the Harley frame, the sissy bar would have been leaning towards me, probably hitting me in the back of the head if I tried to tie that all together. And I looked at putting tabs on the frame and trying to tie the fender in, and I sat here evenings and built things and clamped things on, and nothing looked right.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work. So that's when I looked at it and went, okay, the only place the sissy bar is going to look right is coming off of, right at the back axle. And I thought, how do I make this happen? So I went to Lowbrow and found a Stingray fender with the rib down the center, and I went, that's going to do the trick.
Yeah, I love that second setup with the fender.
For you listening, you're not going to get to see it. Maybe if you get a chance to go to the YouTube, go check it out.
Yeah.
For the YouTube watchers, I'm going to try and drop some pictures in so you can see what it looks like with the other set of tins on it and the sissy bar. But that was one of the motivating factors for the extra set of tins as well, is just to get that sissy bar tied in.
Yeah.
So having longer fender, I thought, okay, how do I do one tank with that? That's not going to work. So Alien tank, again from Lowbrow. The Alien tank looked great with the Stingray fender, tied together nicely. Picked up the Alien tank to stay true to the original design of the bike, or the way it was when I got it. It had a sporty tank on it, which had some custom paint on it. The custom paint, I kept that tank. It hangs on the wall in the shop here. I'll post a picture of that. I kept that tank because the paint was cool enough. I didn't want to sand it off. I didn't want to destroy that tank.
It's a good memory of where the bike came from.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I bought a direct replacement, same size, style, and everything for the tank that was on it. The reason that I went ahead and used the rear fender and ground the paint job off of it is the tank and fender were not painted at the same time. Once I had the bike, I realized, I got looking at the silver and I got looking at the shadowing, wasn't the same guy and it wasn't the same paint. Which for most people taking a look at the bike, nobody ever noticed.
Yeah, from 10 feet away, everything.
But once really I knew it, that was it.
Yeah.
Couldn't live with it. So I did reuse this short, squat little fender. Changed the mounting system from what was here because it was kind of crude. It wasn't real clean.
I think we're learning that you're quite a perfectionist, which is it shows.
Well,
it's showing. Yeah, it's nice.
I guess what I'd say to that, I try my best. I like doing stuff, and I like being challenged to do things differently. So I do try my best to make things work out. I look at guys like Rick Bray at RKB and Max Hazen, guys like that.
Yeah.
I look at the stuff they do and I think, I am such a fucking hack. I just, it's brutal. But I do my best, and, I'm probably middle of the pack, maybe,
I definitely give
maybe top 60%
I don't want to pump your tires too much on this episode, but you're definitely up there.
I do try. But we did clean that up. That worked out really well.
Yeah.
So now I had the two sets of tins, the two different designs, the sissy bar. I knew where I was going. And I thought, okay, how do I connect this? How do I have one frame with the tins and everything?
Yeah, how the one color matches both.
And I went to the gold. It's House of Color. At this point, I only use House of Color. I used it 45 years ago when I got into doing auto body as a kid. I used it back then. I trust it. I really like their system. It's easy to put things together and make things happen.
Yeah.
So this is what House of Color calls Spanish white gold. I'm not sure that I quite matched the color chip, because mixing by volume rather than by weight, I may have been out a little bit, but it's okay.
I loved it. I loved how this color turned out.
And what I did, and
he's picking up the tank right now.
Yeah, I got to try and describe this. So I have the Alien tank here. The Alien tank has gold stripes, a gold stripe down the center and then off to the sides. The Sportster tank has a gold border around it, and on both of those it's the same gold that's on the frame. Both paint jobs, I'm pretty happy. They tie in really nicely to the frame.
Yeah.
Nothing looks like it's stuck on. It looks like it was meant to be there.
It definitely flows with the frame for sure. And I can't believe you just put. We'll have to talk about that Alien frame.
Oh, we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. I tied it together with the gold. On the Sportster tank, I went with kind of an ivory color that I mixed up. Again, House of Color, super simple. Used their bright white base and just mixed a little bit of the gold candy into the white to tint it a little bit to kind of an off-white, almondy kind of color.
Yeah.
And did inlays on the side and one down the center with some striping around them. Very happy with the way that worked out. I did the stencil for the name on the side, and I'm happy with the way that turned out. And then the challenge came. With the white panels on there, I thought, okay, what do I do? And it certainly had a little bit more of a retro style, retro look to it. And there's a fellow in Calgary here. His name's Gary Miller. He's gone by the name Gamboogie for years. Gary is a great guy and a very talented striper. He might not like it if I told you his age, so I'm just going to say that Gary's retired. And I wanted a Gamboogie original. I wanted pinstriping that was from Gamboogie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of going to be part of the legacy of this bike. It's going to go on forever.
Yeah.
So I took the tank, the Sportster tank and the shorty little fender, took those down to Gary, and they already had the ivory panels and everything on them. And I said, okay, I want you to stripe this. And he looked at it and he said, well, I'm not doing a lot of jobs anymore, but yeah, I'll do this one for you. And he said, what do you want on it? And I said, you're not listening. I want a Gamboogie original.
Yep, free reign.
And he said, what? And I said, do your thing. Like, there's the panels, there's the pieces, do your thing.
I think that's every artist's wet dream.
Yeah, and he said to me, he said, oh, okay, what colors do you want? And I said, again, you're not listening. I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
These are the colors that are on the bike, the gold and the ivory, the rest of it's chrome, so you can do whatever color you want. And he said, oh, and he sounded a little bit lost at the time. He called me up about 2 weeks later and he said, your tank and fender are ready. And I went and picked them up, and they are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, they turned out amazing.
His striping, his style, this is definitely some of his work with for the listeners, there's some stars, there's lots of little dots, there's lots of nice little detail. Very, very happy with it. And on the rear fender, it does say right where everybody can see it, Gamboogie 2022.
Yeah.
And this, provided we don't ever have a catastrophe or a crisis, these will go into history with
it brings the bike into a piece of artwork. And it's not just a bike anymore.
I think so. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think for the listeners, like, I'm going to say my view, it kind of looks like a pinstriped, beautiful spaceship going out into space with like a huge amount of flames at the bottom.
Oh, Harrison, look at you go.
Feeling artistic, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because they both, the one on the tank matches the same one on the fender, and one of the tanks got a little bit more flames coming out of it. They're not flames though, but it's definitely a space shuttle.
I can see that now. But I love freehand pinstriping. Oh my goodness, do I wish I had the generations for that. But at this point in life, I can barely drink from a can without spilling it all over myself.
Oh my
I'd never
God,
pull
we all
a line.
have those days. Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this bike here, because I know that it started as an 883.
Actually, I'm going to stop you there for a second, because I do want to talk about one other thing I did on the tanks.
All right.
So these are, what is this? This is a Frisco mount.
Yep.
Where you have the curved tab at the front and back of the tank.
Yeah.
And I love the mounting system because it's really simple. It's really easy to get at.
It's super clean, too.
Here, it can be. Here's the problem I have.
All right.
I watched some videos about how to mount these. And what most guys are doing is you've got the backbone of the bike, and then the tab on the tank just kind of rests on that backbone. And I looked at that, and I looked at some bikes that had it mounted that way, and what happens is the tab can shift a little bit on the backbone.
Yes.
And you get some chafing and some rubbing going on there, and of course, if you do your own paint, you kind of are fond of what you just did.
Yeah, you're proud of your work, yeah.
So I looked at that and I thought, I think I can do that a little bit better. Long story short, Alfred and I sat down and we took a close look at this. And we drilled into the tab, the hole that was there for like a 5/16 bolt.
Yeah.
We drilled that out to about a 1/2 inch.
All right.
And we made little 1/2 inch washers that would fit in the hole that we drilled.
Okay.
So then we welded the washer into the hole, and then I did a little bit of smoothing on the backside and a little bit of filler work to smooth it all out.
Okay.
I bought bungs, threaded bungs from Lowbrow, top hat bungs,
Yeah.
that drill a hole in the backbone, drop the bung in, weld the bung, and now you got a flat spot being the bung. So now both of these tanks are mounted a flat spot to a flat spot.
Yeah.
With the bolt through it. And just for extra care
Love and affection.
love and affection, I got some of these cool leather washers from Lowbrow, slipped one of those in there. So now the tank is very solid. You've got flat surface on flat surface with that little leather washer between there.
Yeah.
No chafing, no rubbing, no shifting, no nothing. And I like the look. And the only difference is the tab now sits, 3/8 of an inch up off the backbone.
Yeah.
Which I find totally acceptable.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the look.
Well, and here I thought you were just cutting your chaps up,
Yeah.
Putting your chaps underneath your tank.
Nostalgia
right?
stuff,
Yeah,
right?
I thought,
Yeah, there
you
you
were
go.
you're just
There
keeping
you
memories on a new build, And then you bought them, so good to know.
Yeah.
I didn't know those. I didn't know you could buy those. All right, now can we talk about the
Sure.
meat and potatoes?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so I know that it started as an 883, and going from an 883, was it that you just didn't like the umph of an 883? You needed more, or because now it's a 1273.
1275.
1275.
Yeah, 1275. So for me, Harrison, this is all art. And, when I see a picture of an aluminum engine block with pistons in it and the heads aren't on yet or anything, you see that aluminum and you see those pistons and the domes and whatever. That is art to me. And I look at that and I think about everything that goes on in that engine when it's running. And I think about the aluminum connecting rods and how they're machined and that somebody designed them and that stuff. It's all art. It's part of it.
It's beautiful.
So for me, this bike isn't getting raced. It's not doing anything like that. And it has, as an 883, it had enough power to scare me.
Yeah, I'll race you with my 883.
Yeah, like this, it's crazy. But I wanted to build kind of the nicest piece of art that I could.
Okay.
So that meant going as big as you could go
Definitely.
currently, without crazy modification. I wanted to go big. I wanted to make it work right, do all those things. And of course, from my racing days, building race engines.
I was going to say, it kind of brings the hot rod into it.
Yeah, I'm kind of challenged with it.
For sure.
And that's where we headed.
Awesome. What 1273 or 1275 kit did you put in it? What brand?
I went with Hammer Performance.
Okay.
And I will tell you, there's lots of 1250 and 1275 kits out there.
Yeah, I was going to say
everybody's
hundreds.
doing a good job. No criticism. But as a race guy, when I went to Hammer's website and read the information and the support material and watched the videos, these guys just know these engines, and they know them really, really well. Hammer Dan's a riot. His videos are great. You got to watch it sometime.
Oh, I've got to check him out now.
You can tell Hammer Dan is a oily hands, get it done kind of guy. Aaron is a totally different dude from Hammer Dan. Hammer Dan's the guy that you would sit down and have a beer with after putting one of these together. Aaron is kind of the, I hope I'll probably get a hate mail on this one, but he's kind of the mad scientist, and he's a little bit dry, and he's not going to be, super friendly with you, but he's going to tell you exactly what has to happen to make that motor work, and you better listen.
Hey, we all need one of those guys in our lives.
So
sure.
Aaron's awesome, and his understanding, his knowledge, blows me away. So between the two of them and all the guys at Hammer Performance, and even the shipper, she's a sweetheart. They did everything for me, and I just super happy with Hammer.
Awesome, yeah. And then the pipes. Did you make these pipes, or did you buy
These are
them?
Paco.
Okay.
These are Paco. Here, I'll let this camera get a shot there. Those are Paco upswept. When I got the bike, the first thing I changed was the exhaust, because it had those crazy snake pipes that came out right at your foot.
Oh yeah, love to burn yourself.
Down in the center. And the first time I fired it up, it blew a flame about 1.5 feet long out past my leg, and I thought, okay, I don't like this.
Oh, that's just what makes riding fun, brother. You know,
it has to go away. So I put these on. The sound out of these pipes is fantastic. It's just straight piped.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure Aaron at Hammer Performance would disagree with.
Yeah, he's not gonna like you for that.
He wasn't happy that I was taking the VOES off of the bike either.
Oh.
But again, to me, basics art. I don't have space for that vacuum stuff.
Nobody does.
And you know what? My race engines run full throttle, and they run just fine.
Yeah.
I know I'm not running full throttle all the time with this.
Yeah.
You know what? There's absolutely no reason that this can't work.
Oh, it'll handle
without VOES. So that's where we're at.
Awesome. And then even to the getting into detail here, all the covers on this bike have been polished, and I see you've got, oh man, what would be the right word for these? Ribs in your ignition?
Yes. The rib cover,
cover?
And the points cover, or the ignition cover, and the derby cover are both from Moon.
Okay.
Moon Eyes products. Again, if you want to talk about nostalgia, what's more nostalgic than Moon equipped?
Yeah.
I thought they were pretty cool. I haven't seen those on any bike in this area.
I haven't either, yeah.
Very different. And the one that was on this side, it came with the bike, said something about
ride to live, live to ride?
Die to ride. Anyway, it had die in there, and I'm not a big guy to invite death, so I just thought, we don't need to say die on there.
Gotcha.
We'll get rid of that.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, and then when you did the hardtail conversion here, what did you have to do to the chain setup?
Hold on, I'm going to back you up
to
the engine again.
Okay.
Back up to the engine, Mikuni carburetor, all kinds of modifications that Hammer recommended. I shipped the heads down to Hammer. They reworked the heads.
Okay.
The 1275 kit, amazing. They do the assembly on it, so it came back. The jugs had the pistons already in them. All you had to do was do up the connecting rods.
Oh, that's easy.
So it was pretty easy to install the stuff. They recommended a bronze gear drive for the oil pump. They recommended the new oil pump with the bigger scavenging section.
Yeah, big power. You need a lot of cooling.
Different rotor on the charging system because it goes on with more bolts and it's stronger and won't fail. And there were just a whole bunch of things that Aaron said, well, if you're going to build this motor, if you really want to do it right, this is what you should do. We've seen these things fail.
You can't cut corners when you're making big
power.
That's just the way of the game.
Pretty much everything that Aaron recommended, I went with.
Yeah.
I did it because I wanted this thing to work. First time I fired it up, it fired right up. I followed their break-in procedures to a T.
Really?
This
you
this
can hold
motor,
yourself back?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh no, they're very specific about how you break their motors in, and this motor is flawless. It makes great oil pressure. It runs great. The Mikuni carburetor is fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything about this is exactly the way I wanted it, and super happy. The push rod covers are a funny story.
Okay, hit me with that.
Because the ones I had were really bad. They were dented and scraped and all kinds of stuff.
Just
They were ugly.
Aged.
And being in 1996, I went over to Calgary Harley-Davidson and I said, yeah, I need push rod tubes. And they said, no, that's not going to happen. And they were obsolete. So the guys at CHD did me a favor and they did a search to see if there were any out there. And sure enough, there were 4 on the shelf in Rimouski, Quebec. And I called the guys in Rimouski, and they went and checked, and sure enough, they had them, and they purelated them to me. So that is the last set of chrome pushrod tubes for this vintage of Sportster in Canada. We didn't check the U.S., but I got the last ones in Canada.
Wow.
So kind of nice. They are fresh. Chrome, they're beautiful, they're perfect, and I'm very happy to have them.
Yeah, they do look gorgeous. We should get a shot of that for them too.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
No, excellent. And then coming from there, like Mikuni carb, love it. I have a Mikuni on my 96 Electra Glide. I have no problems with it. And then we got to talk about this oil tank. So for everyone listening, this is a beautiful oil tank with a spade on it, and it's just positioned right, and it looks slick, but you gotta tell me about it.
Is that embossed? Is that the right word for that?
I would say, yeah, because it's
stamped.
I think it's embossed because stamped would be an indent.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like,
so, yes, the bike came with that oil tank. Again, it was matte black, and had the spade on the sides with red pinstriping outlining the spade. And it didn't look bad. It looked pretty good. I was okay with it for a long time. Seats black, so it kind of went together. Once I got all the polishing done and trimmed up that the cover on this side to expose the chrome gear on the chain and all, chrome sprocket, I should say, pardon me, and the chrome Paco exhaust and all that tank needed to be chrome. So I did go ahead and chrome it, but it is the original tank that came on it. So again, one of those things that I've maintained because I liked it.
Nice. Excellent. All right. Well, and then I guess we got to ask, is there anything changed in the trans for gearing wise? Or
transmission is just stock,
factory?
just the way it should be. Energy 1 clutch, again, hammer
big
performance.
Power, big upgraded clutch.
Upgrade the clutch. Seems how we're right there. The speedometer is an interesting piece.
I see you have to look down.
It's a Drag Specialties speedometer.
And it's right in front of the seat here.
It sits right on my thigh. Let me put it this way. I have never seen that speedometer when I'm riding the bike.
I believe you, but you're always hugging the speed.
And that's the whole point of it, because the law says you shall have a speedometer. And this is my rebellious side saying, there, I got a speedometer.
All right.
Can't see the thing, but it's there.
It's there, yeah. And you're just hugging it the whole time.
What was interesting with this is it was originally mounted off of the backbone. There was just a tab welded on there. And when I went to take the engine apart, it turned out that once we had the cover off the top, you couldn't get that push rod out because it hit the bottom of the
the bottom of the
tab.
Speedo.
Not just the Speedo, but the bottom of the tab, which is welded to the backbone.
Oh yeah. Great. Yeah.
So the only way to get that push rod out was to actually take the engine out of the frame and then pull the push rod out. I decided at that point that I would incorporate the mount into the seat hinge and mount. And that's what I've done there. So now it sits with that. So when you take the seat off, the Speedo's out of the way, and now that push rod comes out and everything's good.
And again, since we're here, we got to talk about, how did you end up with the Springer seat?
That's the one that came on it.
No way.
Those are the same Beehive springs. That
Really?
is exactly the way that came. And again...
Did you bronze the springs?
Nope, they were like that.
Wow, okay.
So trying to maintain as much of that original bike that I fell in love with, I wanted to keep that.
Excellent. Right on. Well, then moving our way to the back, I've got some things that I want to come back to in the middle here, but that's just a good big topic that I want to land on there. Chain and sprocket kit, is this what came with the bike? Or did you? Yeah?
Yep. Same.
So then nothing, you didn't have to change anything there.
I did do a chrome rear master cylinder.
Oh, master cylinder.
Another lowbrow piece. That just needed to happen. The old one was black and ugly. And then
I noticed we keep the same, what did you call these nuts?
Pike
nuts all around. So I'll just call them spiky nuts. Spiky nuts all the way around the bike. And then another thing that we didn't touch on the front that is a theme too is the bullet signals.
Yes.
I love those.
They're cool. They're chrome. They're small. They work just fine.
They keep it classy. They don't bring your eye to anything.
Thanks.
It's nice. Yeah. And then, all the way to the back here, we've got your Stop Classic brake light.
Yes.
That's not factory, clearly.
Not factory.
Is there a story behind it?
A little bit of one. The light came on the bike. The rear brake, when I got the bike, was mounted up top here.
Oh, okay.
And it was okay, but it was really out there. It was kind of big and gaudy. And it was
a visual point for people.
I didn't love it. So I went over to, at the time, Lucid to figure out what to do about a license plate mount. So Tim, the fabricator, who now works at Precision.
Great guy.
Tim's a great guy. Love Tim. He said, well, why don't you make your own? And
you love hearing those words.
He got me a piece of plate, and he showed me how he bends it in a vise and this and that, and turned me loose, and I bent it all.
No
and he said,
way.
okay, I've got a pattern for this bracket, and we tied it in. This is right on the axle, and this is where the chain adjuster comes into play. So the chain adjuster actually holds this from going up and down.
Oh, nice. And then did you mount the rear brake differently at the same time you made the license plate bracket?
No, I had left it where it was. It wasn't until I tore it apart that I decided to change
and what
the brake.
Rear brake setup is that then?
That is stock.
Okay.
And that's even the stock bracket cut up a whole bunch.
And then just flipped.
Flipped down.
Yeah.
Used this little, little adapter here with rod ends, kind of tied in nicely.
Yeah.
Allowed for a couple more pike nuts, which was, always good, right?
Oh, yeah.
So a couple more pike nuts there, and so far that works real well.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous look, too, and it keeps the brake. It almost brings the flow from the front to the back even more aggressive to what it was previously.
Yes.
And then looking on this side, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on over here too. This stamped spade in the back. It's a gold or brass polished spade.
So that was made by a friend of ours who did that all by hand. It's a great piece. I had a couple people last summer mention that they thought it was real nice detail work to have that on there. I will share with you, though, why it's there.
Okay.
Because Bruce is a dumbass.
Oh, all right.
And I had the frame. I brought it back from the paint booth, and I'm sure builders can relate to this kind of stuff. I bring the thing back from the paint booth, and I had it over there in front of my bench. And I was going to do something, and I had to grab the air hose, and the air hose slipped out of my hand, and the coupler came down and smacked the frame right on the top.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I noticed it. Yeah.
And took a chip out of my brand new paint. I lost my shit. I just about took it and tied it to the back of the Suburban and dragged it up and down the alley just to really destroy it.
Yeah.
But I calmed down and I thought, okay, what can I do? So for those of you who follow, subscribe, or whatever it is you do, you now know Bruce's secret that there's a hunk of paint missing from under that gold spade.
Hey, you never know, but it's a good thing that we're all carrying that with you now. Does it feel better that it's off your chest too?
Actually, it does.
I believe you. Yeah, totally.
It's good therapy
It
session.
is a good therapy.
Thanks.
No problem. Anytime. I'm here for you. All right. Well, kind of clears up the back for us. Beautiful description of a lot of these intricate things that you put on this bike. I really got to hit a point here though. A lot of this electrical is super clean, and on a lot of bikes like my Sporty, it's everywhere.
Right.
So let's talk about what you deleted, and just your view on what you wanted the electrical on this bike to be, because it's fairly seamless. You don't get to see a lot of what's going on.
Right.
So.
Right. And the electrical on this bike left some things to be desired. It wasn't the cleanest. The plastic box that everything was mounted in wasn't the best. Lead acid battery down in the bottom where they typically all are.
Yeah.
Strapped in with a rubber or whatever. Anyway.
And you get all that leaking acid everywhere.
Yeah, it was fairly typical. And not terrible, but I thought I can do better than this.
All right.
One thing I've always loved, especially on a cafe racer like the XS650 we're working on right now, I've always liked a big open area in that triangle of the frame.
Ooh, yeah, I'm a sucker for that too.
Yeah, I've always thought that looked good. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to achieve that, but in thinking that way, I was able to come up with a box that is mounted under the seat. It's actually mounted under the seat mounting bar. It's kind of a funny shape. It has an angle at the bottom just to give it a little bit of geometry, a little bit of style. And that box houses my lithium iron phosphate battery, my Moto Gadget, all the wiring, the fuses and everything, and the oil pressure gauge.
Yeah.
And I put the oil pressure gauge in there just because you should probably never run oil lines in with all your electrical.
Yeah.
But if you do it right, it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it looks cool.
And it's kind of neat because before I jump on, I just take a look under here. The gauge is mounted right under the seat. It's in the top of the box.
Oh, yeah, that is very slick.
And I can get a look at it. I don't need to see it once everything's running and I'm riding. But it's kind of a nice diagnostic or maintenance thing.
Yeah.
So that was the point there, was to try and get a box that hid everything, that was clean.
It. Yeah.
And I think it cleaned it up a lot. I wouldn't mind building a new box at some point to go in there.
Oh yeah, because bikes are never done.
No.
Yeah.
And I would probably chrome it. That one's not bad. I'm just not super happy with the access door. I think I could have done better there.
Yeah.
So that's something that may change down the road, but the concept is good. I think it worked out fairly well.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
And the components. Moto Gadget, excellent product.
Yeah.
Can't say enough about Moto Gadget.
I've got to stop you right there because I feel like we've got to say that there is no keys, nothing on this bike.
Keys.
It doesn't seem. Either it's very well hidden, or you don't need any?
Don't need keys.
Yeah, you don't need keys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I did is the Moto Gadget. So Moto Gadget's an excellent product. That thing is indestructible, makes wiring so easy. Beautiful thing about Moto Gadget, it's all ground activated rather than voltage activated.
Excellent, yeah.
So there are 22 gauge wires running through the handlebars because all you're doing is grounding the input. There's no current, there's no voltage, or very little current.
Yeah.
I'll have hate mail about saying there's
all
no
the
current.
electricians out there.
So running grounds is really, really easy.
Yeah.
And very safe too. You don't have any situations where a wire with 12 volts on it can chafe and ground out to the edge of a hole or anything like that. Yeah. So nice system. Can't say enough about Moto Gadget, except the Moto Gadget fob system.
Yeah.
I think they missed the mark.
They can refine it a little bit better?
Well,
or is it big?
It's refined.
I feel like people don't know very much about this Moto Gadget.
Yeah, it's typical of Moto Gadget stuff. It's very nice. I mean, their mirrors and their blinkers and their Moto Gadget. What the heck is that thing called? Anyway, it's their wiring base system.
Okay, like fuse panel.
Well, yeah, sort of, but
okay.
It's the brain, if you will.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what they call it. But anyway, the Moto Gadget brain is excellent. It's all good. But even as the guys at Revival Cycle say in their video, the fob system it's almost like a coin, a metal coin that goes on your keychain.
Yeah.
And there's a sensor that you have to mount on the bike in a position where you can pass the coin under it.
Oh.
So you need to have the sensor, and then you have to take the coin out of your pocket and pass it within, it's fairly tight. It's like within a half inch or something.
Oh, wow.
You have to pass this coin past the sensor, and that will enable the ignition system. And I didn't like that. As the guy at Revival says, if you're going to reach in your pocket and take something out, why wouldn't you just take a key out?
Exactly. Yeah.
I found a company called Digital Guard Dog. Awesome product.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I haven't heard of them either.
Digital Guard Dog has a true RFID, radio frequency.
Just like our key fobs in cars.
Just
and
like
Harleys,
fobs in cars. Their fob has two different settings. You can either set it so that you have to push the button to activate the system. It's not my favorite setting. Or you can set it so that as long as the fob is within 4 feet of the bike, it activates the system.
Okay.
So very simple on this bike. I will share with you, the Digital Guard Dog is not mounted in the metal box because the guys at Digital Guard Dog said that would be a really bad idea with radio frequency and a steel box.
Yeah.
That wasn't the best plan.
Even weird.
So the Digital Guard Dog is actually mounted right under the center of the engine.
Oh, okay.
Where, unless you know it's there, you wouldn't know it's there.
Oh, well, now we all know. I have to
now you all know, yeah. And it's mounted with pike nuts, I might add.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it totally is.
See them down there? Yeah.
Wow. Man, yeah, for all the people that want to look under Bruce's bike, you really should take a gander down there.
So the Digital Guard Dog is down there. The way the system works, with the fob in my pocket, I walk up, I flip the run-stop switch to run, and hit the start button, and away it goes. Flip it back off, walk 4 feet away from the bike, system's disabled, everything's good.
That is slick.
Yes, and tying, nowhere could I find where anybody had ever tied a Digital Guard Dog to a Moto Gadget.
Huh,
yeah. So that took a little bit of engineering. We sat down and worked that out and called the guys at Digital Guard Dog and said, this is what we think should happen. Is this right? And good customer support. I'm going to be honest, not the friendliest guys in the world.
Okay.
But factual.
Yeah, and they got the job done for you.
They said, don't put it in a steel box, and yes, you're looking at the wiring the right way. That will work.
I love that.
So that's what we did there.
Okay. And then is the ignition system the same? So like spark plugs and coils
It's a Dyna 2000 ignition module, which is what Hammer recommends.
Okay. Which is updated from what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went with some nice fat ignition wires. Those are Excels. I relocated the coil because I wanted to keep, and I'm going to just scoot around front here for a second. I wanted to keep this area very clean. This is where the ignition switch and coil would typically be.
Yep.
And it blocks the view of that beautiful Hammer Performance billet aluminum intake. I wanted people to be able to see that. I wanted this top motor mount clean, so I shaved a bunch of it off, ground it, had it chromed. The choke is right here between the cylinders, right below the intake. And when you look at the bike on this side, you're looking right at the intake manifold, which I like.
Yeah.
So I mounted the coil back at the back on this electrical box. Was a little bit concerned about the coil being that close to the Moto gadget, but we don't seem to get any interference. It works, and I think it's because we have a steel box there shielding the Moto gadget.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, all polished cases over there. Beautiful. Yeah.
And then, of course, in the electrical system, the final thing, and you and I are going to try and add something on to the video or do a separate video about this, but the lithium iron phosphate battery, this technology is amazing. It's so cool. And there have been horror stories about putting lithium batteries in Harleys and different issues and everything. I can tell you that once you put a Moto gadget in, rewire the thing, do a digital guard dog, there is no issue with a lithium battery in there. It charges fine, the system works, there's no overcharging, everything works just the way it's supposed to. One of the things, do you know the difference between lithium ion and lithium iron phosphate?
Ooh, that's a tough one, and I've got to say I don't.
We're going to try and get an expert to tell us more about this, but my research so far tells me lithium ion is good, but lithium ion can overheat and can start a fire.
Yes. Oh, very much so.
Lithium iron phosphate will live for approximately 4 to 5 times as many cycles, and lithium iron phosphate will not overheat or catch on fire.
Oh, no way.
So that's what I've read.
We've definitely got to dive into that
a fair bit, somebody. For sure. That battery is 5 1/4 inches by 2.5 inches by 3 5/8.
I don't think a lot of people would remember the dimensions of their battery, but that was very impressive.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I like
Not
that.
bad for an old guy.
I know. You're really showing off here. Weird flex, but all right.
So anyway, we're going to dig into battery technology because, man, that just cleans it up. It's in that box.
It is,
There's no fumes. There's no leaks. There's no nothing. It's light. Lithium batteries, especially for me, lithium iron phosphate, I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a great caption up this bike for sure. I do have one question though, and it's about your first build and how it affected this build, your bike Frankie. Did you put any of that love and inspiration into here, or was this a completely different idea for you? And if people don't know the build Frankie, it was a KZ 440?
Yep.
Yeah. A beautiful bike that built Bruce for his daughter-in-law?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I know.
See, your memory's pretty sharp
I'm
too.
Going on.
Yeah. There you go.
So did you bring any of that into this bike, Bruce? Or was this such kind of a clean slate to start something new?
You bring your paint in, metal flake on Frankie, no metal flake here, but the whole concept of custom paint, you bring that with you, polishing, detail, all of that kind of stuff. So detail pieces, just to give you a quick example.
Yeah.
On the Alien tank, I made the gas cap for it, and you were asking about spades.
Yeah, I've got to also hear the story about the spades.
There are spades airbrushed on the green paint job on the Alien tank. But when Karen and I were down in Orlando, we went to Universal, to the Hard Rock Cafe.
Okay.
And when I was there, I saw these bottle opener metal playing cards that have this big ace in the center.
Yeah.
And or big spade, I should say.
Yeah.
And I said to Karen, I said, I need to buy a couple of those because I'm going to build that into one of my projects someday. And I was thinking specifically of this one because we already had this bike.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to make that work someday. And so what I've done for the people listening is I built a post for on the gas cap and mounted the corner of the bottle opener into that post. So this Ace of Spades bottle opener, which says Hard Rock Cafe Orlando on it, is sticking up. And that's one of those little detail things, Harrison, that I like to do because I look at it and it's a fond memory, and I know Karen looks at it and goes, that's pretty cool that's there.
Yeah,
and
we bought a lot of cards.
We remember being at Universal and doing the roller coasters and all that stuff. So it's fun stuff.
Definitely. And that kind of set the theme for the rest.
And on the Kawasaki, Tracy loves Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
And when we were at, where's Harry Potter? Universal. I guess that's where they have Harry Potter too.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Harry Potter guy, but anyway.
I don't read.
We found a keychain that had a little, kind of like a coin in the center that spun.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with this keychain, so I bought an extra one. And when I did her Kawasaki, I relocated the ignition switch because I redid all the electrics on it, moved the ignition switch to the back under the seat pod, and had this gap between the gauges.
Okay.
And I thought, wait a minute. So I mounted this keychain to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And what was really cool was the first time I test rode the bike and got going down the road, I realized that the air movement spun the coin in the center.
That's
right?
perfect.
And that's probably Tracy's favorite part of the bike. She loves that Harry Potter keychain on there. So I like building little details in like that where I can.
From there, you built them into here.
Cafe Racer is a totally different bike than this.
Yeah.
You know, choppers are different, but it's all just
craftsmanship,
art and detail and
passion.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there any other? Well, okay. I actually, for the viewers, your gas tank that you have on the bike now, the Sportster tank. We'll probably end on this, but it looks like a milk carton, like gas cap. How did you get that?
It's actually a lowbrow gas cap. It was chrome. I took it, sanded it down, and when I did the ivory, I painted the gas cap as well.
Looks like it's super cool. I haven't seen a gas cap painted in a while.
Thank you. It's clean.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is you don't notice it.
No.
You notice the chrome on the handlebars. You notice the speedometer. You notice the pinstriping.
Yeah.
But the gas cap doesn't jump out at you and say, hey, look at me.
Exactly. Right? Well, and obviously two different themes. We have one with a bottle opening card, the Ace of Spades on there. Yes. And then we have one that you don't even want to know where you put in the gas, you know?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Bruce.
And one last thing for you, Mr. Mojo Rising. I get a lot of people asking me about the name.
Oh, okay.
So the name obviously, well, not obviously, because you'd have to be old enough to know, but Jim Morrison and the Doors did a song called L.A. Woman. Yeah, it's going back a ways, Harrison. Yeah. Earlier than you. Buddy.
Yeah, I believe you.
L.A. Woman. And it was back in the days of heavy drug use and hippies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Jim Morrison, I'm sure, partook in
the
drug thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were doing L.A. Woman, and the drummer, John Densmore, had said to Jim Morrison, he said, I want to slow the song right down, and then I want to build it back up, kind of like a a sexual climax.
Okay.
So I want to build the song back up.
Little rhythm to it.
So Morrison went to work. They came into the recording studio the next day, and if you listen to LA Woman, it slows right down. And then Morrison starts singing Mr. Mojo Rising, and they pick up the beat. Really cool. Densmore said, you know, it worked perfectly. It was exactly what he wanted to have happen. And he asked Jim about it after they had recorded, and he said, man, where'd you get that from? Like, where did that come from? And Morrison took a piece of paper and wrote out Mr. Mojo Rising, and then he wrote Jim Morrison and started drawing lines between all the letters.
Yeah.
Mr. Mojo Rising is an anagram for Jim Morrison.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so,
I would have never guessed.
So why did Bruce put that on his bike?
Here, wait. Why did Bruce put that on his bike?
It's all about creativity.
Oh, okay.
You know what? That kind of artistry, that kind of creative thought, that you would connect those things and come up with that. I like to think that maybe there's a little bit of creativity like that in me and the things I do. So kind of to pay homage to my youth and to tie that in and the creativity and everything.
And the bike
and the fact that Karen loved the name Mr. Mojo Rising. She thought it was super cool.
Yeah.
So
I think that's definitely going to be the only thing I call you now.
No, it's the only thing you'll call my bike.
No, I think that's you. The build-up man. I love it.
Right on.
Well,
okay.
I think we've touched on everything.
Are we good?
I think we're good.
You've got places to go.
Yeah, I do.
You got to take your gal out tonight.
Yeah.
And I might take mine out. And
wow.
I think we had a good session.
I think we've been great.
Like, subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on podcast platforms.
Instagram.
Yeah. Instagram. We're on Instagram. At Speed and A-N-D spelled out color with a K and no U. Yeah, that probably made that way more complicated.
I always forget color with a K, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, Speed and Color, at Speed and Color. That's the way to find us on Instagram and YouTube.
Thanks for
We'll be
following us
looking for you. Thank you. Yeah, great session.
it.
Harrison, awesome job, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you
Be
again.
here bugging you a little bit more.
Yeah,
we'll get it going.
Yeah. Very good.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
See you later.
There you go.
It's a cap.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Isn't that impressive that we can do that in one take?
Yeah.
Don't say that.